Arguably one of the greatest tight ends of all time is Rob Gronkowski, and recently he was at a Raiders game where he was asked the question specifically about what he thought about the Las Vegas Raiders tight end Brock Bowers. Check out what Gronkowski had to say.
Gronk, what you think about Brock Bowers, tight end for the Raiders?
Guy's a legend, bro, already. It's unbelievable what he's doing.
What do you think that Tom Brady brings to the Raiders and by way of free agency?
I mean, we're going to see. It's his first year being the owner of the Raiders, and I think he's going to have a big presence with them. I mean, the guy knows football inside and out. He knows the organization of how it's run inside and out. And Tom, he's going to do a great job. He's going to bring in great players, that's for sure.
So there you guys have it, right? Rob Gronkowski is essentially saying that Brock Bowers is a legend already. It's amazing what he's doing. And obviously, Brock Bowers is not a legend, right? Let's just be honest. He has to go out there, prove it for 10 plus years. But he's definitely on that path to becoming a legend. And what's crazy is Rob Gronkowski, he watches tape. He's a guy that played the position at the highest level. This is a guy who, putting it out there that Brock Bowers is a legend already, means that he thinks this guy's actually going to be a really, really good football player. And I'm not surprised to hear Rob Gronkowski say that. But what's crazy about that entire conversation right there is there was a second question that was kind of also asked. And Gronkowski basically talked about what he thinks Tom Brady could ultimately bring. And I love the question that was ultimately asked. But Rob Gronkowski was basically asked, what can Tom Brady do for the Las Vegas Raiders? How does he impact free agency? And Gronkowski said that he thinks Tom Brady's going to do a really good job because he's smart, he knows football, and he's likely to impact free agency because guys might want to come play for a team ultimately led by Tom Brady or that has Tom Brady at the top of its team. You know what's interesting about Rob Gronkowski saying that is, I would always think that, hey, the most important part of a team is always going to be a head coach because that's the guy that's coaching. And maybe that is one of the most important aspects of winning, right? Is how good is your head coach? Is he a good play caller? How, if he's a defensive guy, how good is your offensive coordinator? Can they call good plays, design a good offense? I still think that's a big part of winning, but I also think the guys you have running your team definitely make a big difference, right? And the reason why it's important is because, you have a salary cap, which is equal, across the NFL, but the strategies are all a little bit different, right? An example is like the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have a lot of money invested on the offensive line. They have a right guard that's one of the highest paid right guards. They have a right tackle that's top 10 for tackles. They have a left guard they drafted in the first round that they're also going to have to pay. He's arguably the best guard in the NFL in Tyler Smith. And that's kind of the strategy the Cowboys take. You look at a different team. You look at a team like the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have a lot of money invested in their running back, two of their wide receivers and their tight end. And not every team puts that type of money in their weapons on the offense side of the football. Not every team pays a running back that much money, right? So every team kind of builds a little bit differently. And, what Gronkowski's basically telling us is that Tom Brady's smart and he knows, kind of the ins and outs of football. And it's something I never really thought about, but the Raiders' strategy as we kind of go forward could be completely different. Of course, Mark Davis selling to Tom Brady wasn't just to sell a part of the team, but it was to get Tom Brady into the building and to get this guy's input. And I think it's a part of why Mark Davis has told us multiple times at this point that Tom Brady's definitely going to be a part of the process. And I'm excited for that, right? I'm excited to see what Tom Brady can kind of do for the Raiders because I'm pretty confident when I say this. There's going to be times where free agents come into the building. Maybe it's the top defensive tackle that's a free agent like we saw last year, or maybe it's going to be a top, running back or a top wide receiver potentially, which is something the Raiders absolutely need coming up here. And Tom Brady will have a big impact potentially talking to some of these guys, right? Talking about some of the benefits with the Raiders, right? The strategy is to kind of go forward. Tom Brady might even know some of these guys, right? The guy's been in the league for such a long time, and he's come across so many different people. But more than that, right, the quarterback position is another position the Raiders got to get right, and Tom Brady played that position at the highest level. So Tom Brady will also have some input on that. Now, everybody wants Shedeur Sanders, but we don't know if Shedeur Sanders is better than Cam Ward. We don't know if those two guys are better than Jalen Milroe. We don't really know which guys are going to translate best into the NFL, right? There was so much talk about the Penn State quarterback, Drew Aller, and people were like, he would have probably been the number one overall pick. And most people had no clue or even talked about this guy potentially being the number one overall pick, right? But sometimes quarterbacks translate out of college differently based off of like kind of where they're at. And it'll be interesting because Tom Brady will have a big say in that, and I'm excited to see what Tom Brady can ultimately do for the Raiders. I love that Rob Gronkowski gave a big shout out to Brock Bowers, basically saying he's a legend already. But we still have a game coming up as well, and I want to take a second here and talk a little bit about this game coming up because the Raiders actually are going to get healthy, and they're actually going to get their quarterback back. Aiden O'Connell, the Las Vegas Raiders quarterback who had an injury just 2 weeks back, missed this past week's game, is fully practicing for the Las Vegas Raiders, which is very, very, very shocking to kind of see, right? I'm going to be the first to tell you guys, what I heard with Aiden O'Connell was obviously not correct. I don't know why the Raiders are deciding to kind of go forward with this strategy of, hey, let's put in Aiden O'Connell, our starting quarterback. In my opinion, if Aiden O'Connell started last week against the Falcons, I think the Raiders would have potentially beat the Atlanta Falcons. And coming up into a game with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jags are not a good football team. The Jags are 3-11. The Raiders are 2-12. If the Raiders beat the Jags, our draft pick's going to be hindered, right? We're going to go from essentially having a top 2 pick. We'll fall down to the 7th overall pick. And putting in Aiden O'Connell is basically sending the message that the Raiders are looking to win football games. Right? And I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, it doesn't make sense to win football games. It doesn't make sense to tank, right? I know some people say that as well. I'm not 100% sure what the strategy behind this entire thing is, right? Aiden O'Connell's likely not going to be the Raiders quarterback going into next season. Even if the Raiders don't draft the quarterback, you're still not rolling forward with Aiden O'Connell. It just doesn't make sense. But the fact that the Raiders are coming out here and saying we're going to put Aiden O'Connell in to start against the Jags, it's going to be an interesting game nonetheless, man. The Raiders might put up points, like a lot of points, right? The Jags' defense is banged up. Their offense is banged up. They're missing their starting quarterback. They have guys that have already basically been put onto the injured reserve, right? They're out for the season. It's going to be an interesting season as we kind of go forward. So Aiden O'Connell is likely to start for the Raiders. We might have a new guard coming in this week, right? So Jordan Meredith has an ankle injury. He did not participate. It could be Andres Pete, but it could also be some of the younger guys that we have. So we'll see what ends up actually happening. One of the things I would actually like to see, and I think this is just for like long-term purposes, is I'd actually like to see if Andre James could potentially play that left guard position. Right? I actually want to see if there's a chance that Andre James starts at left guard, and if he has any upside as a guard, right? Like, I think that's something the Raiders should consider with Andre James. But we'll see if that actually ends up happening. I think it'll probably just end up being Andres Pete who steps in. Maybe Thayer Munford's another guy, right? I think one of the best things with these games as the season kind of comes to an end is if there's guys that haven't played a specific position, maybe they're guys that you're ready to move off of, right? Thayer Munford, Andre James are 2 examples. Let's put them into random positions. Let's see what they can kind of do. All right. For an example, let's say this is the last year Nate Hobbs is going to be with the Raiders, right? Because he is a free agent coming up. Let's see what Nate Hobbs can do at another position. Let the guy return some punts or kicks, right? Let's just see what he has, right? I probably wouldn't do that with Nate Hobbs. It's probably a bad example. Truth be told, Nate Hobbs has to be brought back to the Raiders. He's arguably our second or third best player. But you guys get the point, right? If there's a player that might not be here, maybe they lost their position. Let's see what they can kind of do, right? But the Raiders do have some guys that are not participating. Aiden O'Connell is obviously back. But the guy I'm actually most excited to watch coming up is a guy that's healthy, but it's a guy that actually gets an opportunity to play against the team that he that ultimately drafted him. This team basically gave up on him last year. Actually, they probably gave up on him about 2 years ago when they drafted Trayvon Walker with the number 1 overall pick. But Clayvon Chaisson was drafted the 20th overall pick by the Jags back in 2020. They kept him starting for 1 year, and then they quickly replaced him with Trayvon Walker. Not saying Walker's like a lot better than Chaisson, but he is better, I think. And, Chaisson went on to the Panthers. Panthers didn't really want him, and the Raiders brought him in, and it's flipped his career around a little bit. So this is a guy that's going to be motivated against the Jags. So I want to see what this guy could potentially bring. But he was asked a little bit about it, and I want you guys to listen into what he had to say.
Now, before we go forward, I want to just take a second to give a big shout out to the sponsor of this channel because this content would not be possible without Underdog. If you guys have never utilized Underdog before, trust me, man, you guys are missing out. I don't do traditional fantasy sports that often. I did do one league this year, but generally speaking, I'm not really doing it anymore. And that's mostly because of Underdog. Underdog has this game that I really, really enjoy. It's called Pick'em. Essentially, you're going to go out there and just make picks that you think are going to be right. They'll have pretty much every pick you can think of for every player, and they have multiple categories as well. So an example would be I think Aiden O'Connell is going to throw for 125 yards. And you're essentially just going to pick higher on that, right? I think he'll have more than 125 yards. You might say, hey, Dak Prescott's going to have at least 2 touchdowns. I'll pick higher on that. You might say Caleb Williams is going to have a rushing touchdown. And some of those stats also give you multipliers, right? So usually for quarterbacks rushing it in, right? That's something most quarterbacks aren't doing every single week. You'll get like a 4x multiplier on that. So depending on the multiplier, depending on how many picks, you can turn $5 into $400, $1,000, right? Whatever it ends up being. Obviously, it depends on the multiplier, but Underdog to me is one of those places that I pretty much do every single week at this point. Very fun. It makes like watching the Jets and the Dolphins without Tua. It makes them interesting, right? So check out Underdog. If you guys have never used them before, it is the best place. Trust me when I say that. Go to underdogfantasy.com. Use my promo code that you guys see on the screen, or use the app. I recommend the app. So let's get right back into the content.
What does this week mean to you?
It means a lot. It means a lot, for sure.
How much did the weight of the first round, draft pick weigh on you, and like the pressure that builds up when people expect so much right away?
It was a lot. It was a lot. But as expected, I don't think it's a bad thing or anything. I always think of things from the outside in. I'm a basketball fan, so I think of things, and I'm a huge fan of basketball players. So somebody comes to my favorite team, the Rockets, and I feel like they're not helping us to produce well, I'm gonna have some type of feelings here as well too. So it just comes with the love and you know what I'm saying, the passion with the game as expected. So I truly embody it. I'm grateful for expectations are really a good thing. It means something is expected of you, so I appreciate it. And I think just going forward, just still try to just be true to who you are and obviously play within yourself and don't try to just fit everybody else's description of it.
Yeah, obviously you talk about expectations. Your position group right now is just, you got a lot of guys out. Maxx is out, and obviously dealing with some other situations. So how much more weight is on you guys now being shorthanded?
Even more. The load keeps getting heavier. So, but we're built for it. We're prepared for it. I think that's what you kind of take pride in when you're in the trenches. There's a lot of dirty work that gets done. A lot of good things happen, bad things happen that you kind of got to just take with the game. And it's something that we're prepared for. Coach Leonard Karabi, he does a great job of making sure that we're prepared for whatever the week presents.
Is there anything on your end where you feel like maybe extra hype or extra pressure of this game, and like mentally, how do you kind of prepare yourself for those moments of not maybe going too much over the top and trying to accomplish what you want to against your former team?
Yeah, this gonna be. That's a great question. This is the first time it's happening for me, so I wish I had an answer for you. But the emotions are in tune, and this week for sure, I'm looking forward to playing the guys. I think it'll be a great matchup between the two. I feel like the passion was always there. Being able to show it and on the field was something that I always wanted the opportunity to do, and I'm getting it here in Vegas. So I'm truly grateful for the opportunity, like I said, from both here and the Jacksonville giving me.
So there you guys have it, right? Clayvon Chaisson is obviously motivated to play this team. He's obviously excited to play the former team that drafted him. And I'm excited for him as well. I think he's going to have a massive game coming up against the Jags, right? Motivation, those type of things. We'll see what ends up happening, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.